So in section 5.2, we are going to start by focusing on our theoretical probabilities rather than our empirical probabilities that we saw in the previous sections. So we just saw that we can classify all probabilities as either theoretical or empirical. We know that we can use empirical probabilities to estimate and to verify theoretical probabilities. And what we're going to do now is we're going to learn how to calculate theoretical probabilities. So as we're going through and we're working on this, we will see a bunch of rules that are kind of highlighted. This is one chapter where normally if we were taking this test in class, there would be a formula sheet that would go along with it. So as we're going through, you might want to jot down your rules and or take a look at the formula sheet that will be posted in D2L as well. All right. So finding theoretical probabilities. All right, so our first probability rule says for any event A, 0 is less than or equal to P of A, which is less than or equal to 1. All right, so here's kind of an introduction to our notation for probabilities. Events are usually represented by uppercase letters, right? A, B, C, D, etc. The notation P parentheses A is a probability of an event happening, right? So the probability of event A. Probabilities are always numbers between 0 and 1 inclusive. In other words, 0 is less than or equal to the probability of event A, which is less than or equal to 1. Right, so probabilities are always going to be numbers between 0 and 1. As percentages, right, we could say 0% or 100%. Probabilities can also be expressed as fractions. So they can be expressed as fractions, decimals, or percents, but they all have to be between 0 and 1. They could be equal to 0 or 1 as well. So if our probability of event A is equal to 1, then that event always happens. There's a 100% chance of that happening, right? And if our probability is equal to 0, then the event will never happen. And there's a 0% chance of that happening. All right, so in this example at the bottom, we're going to use our first probability rule to look at possible probabilities, identify which of the following numbers could not be probabilities and why. 125% is not a probability. It is a perfectly good percent, but it is not a probability. It is too large. Right? It is greater than 1, greater than 100%. 0.74. It could be a probability. 0.001. It's a very tiny decimal, but it could be a probability. 5.61, not a probability. Right, just like our first one, it is also too large. Right, negative 150%, not a probability. It is a negative number. It is also larger than 100%, so that there's that too. But even if it was a smaller negative percentage, it would not be a probability simply because it was a negative number. So probabilities can only be between 0 and 1, or 0% and 100%. Can't be more than 100%, can't be anything negative.